Okay, we'll get started here in just a second. And because you are so socially distanced from me, I'm going to go ahead and take off my mask, if that's all right. And I know we just have a short amount of time to talk this morning. Thanks for those of you who might be joining us online. My name is Kelsey Edwards. I'm the college counselor, and I'm here to talk to you about the college process. So this is mostly geared towards 11th grade parents. But I think all parents can join us and learn something from this. So we have a bit of a roller coaster, I think, that families go through in the college process, starting from spring of junior year and going through graduation. For some students, this process might go a little bit past graduation, as we have various waitlist opportunities available to students every spring. So current seniors are about right here. They are waiting in the next few weeks to hear back from many colleges. So we have almost 1,000 applications that we are still waiting to hear about. Despite that seemingly large number, what hopefully is a little bit reassuring is that for the current senior class, 80 out of the 96 already have one or more offers in their back pocket. Okay, so they're going into the next few weeks, sort of feeling a sense of confidence. They have somewhere to go, and it might not be their first choice, right? So about a quarter of the students, it is a binding early decision program, and the remaining students are either applied through an early action or regular decision program, but again, have multiple offers potentially to choose from. So it's going to be an exciting few weeks, but one thing that we are expecting this spring is that there will be a considerable increase in the number of students put on the wait list. So for the colleges that you guys are most interested in, they experienced the pandemic in a very surprising way, which is to say a shocking increase in the number of applications, 20, 30, 40% increase in applications. This means colleges have a lot harder time predicting who's really serious about them, who's going to come if they offer them a spot. And so we saw a little bit of this with the early decision pools. But it's reasonable to think that they're going to be a little more conservative with their offers this spring, placing more students on the wait list, and then sort of controlling as they try to hit a very precise target for their incoming class, controlling that through strategic use of the wait list. So you might hear in the next few weeks sort of a lot of surprise about a lot of students being put on the wait list. And again, this may sort of drag the process out for seniors. That could have implications for the current junior class. So we will watch this, we'll learn from this, and see how this might alter application patterns next fall. So in terms of the college process, again, that roller coaster, you all will experience a range of emotions in the coming year. There are times when students will be excited, bored, stressed, a little bit of everything in this process. And everything that they and you are feeling now is very normal. So what I'm hearing, again, from a lot of students is sort of this mix of anxiety and excitement, and this is very normal. Students will follow our emotional lead throughout this process, okay? So I want you to be very conscious of the sort of implicit and explicit expectations you might be communicating to your student. If you're communicating the idea that the only definition of success in this process is getting into Harvard, you're probably setting yourself and your child up for a very stressful year. I can assure you there are hundreds of opportunities out there that will offer them excellent education. There are things in this process that you can control, meeting deadlines, writing essays, and so forth. Your schoolwork, right? How students' transcripts will appear. And there are definitely things you can't control. Those are things that are worth understanding, but you have to sort of set that aside, understand that you can't actually control that stuff. Focus on what you can control. The two key elements, I think, to managing your emotional experience of the coming year, it's not rocket science. Number one is time management, right? So being able to identify sort of what you're working towards, a key deadline, and plan to meet that deadline is really important. That's the key to managing stress here. Again, some students, I think, love the sort of drama of the fall semester of senior year, and it's a ritual that they've heard for all of the previous graduating classes. It doesn't have to be that stressful if students use their time wisely. This summer is going to be a unique opportunity, I think, in that space where there's fewer opportunities to go travel, do internships, and do those sort of face-to-face events. They might have a little more time on their hands this summer to work, get a head start on things like essays or even filling out applications. So again, this mindset is the second piece here, and that's again the student mindset as well as your mindset. So I mentioned earlier the sort of setting yourself up for a difficult journey by thinking Harvard is the only school that your child will ever be happy at. But you know, how you choose to approach this process matters. It will change how you make sense of the entire process and eventually make sense of the outcomes. And you have a choice for how you choose to approach this. So how do you define success, right? I think if you reflect on the last several decades of your life, your own definition of success has likely changed over time. And I think students' definition of success in this process will also change over time. My current definition of success, I'm hoping by the age of 50 to have a better boundary between my work and my life, okay? If you asked me 20 years ago, that would not at all have been on my radar. This idea of finding the one, okay? So as you go into this process, it's a fairly misguided notion that there's one perfect school out there for your son or your daughter. The reality is, again, there are thousands of schools out there, hundreds of schools that will check all those boxes in terms of the personal, social, academic goals that you have. So I assure you, we can find about a dozen or so that are going to be fantastic opportunities for your kids. What's in a name? I know there's a certain, I don't know if the right word is obsession, but focus on the name brand of an institution. I get it. I've worked with international students for a long time. I understand that you have to be thinking long term in terms of a school or credential that will be recognized regardless of where you find yourself living or working decades down the road. So I understand that. But I would like to encourage you to sort of break away from the name of the institution certainly this spring. I really want students to be thinking of and reflecting on who they are, what these institutions have to offer, and really trying to understand that idea of a match, a fit with the school. The name, again, only says so much, right? And so when you actually start comparing schools and looking at the qualities and characteristics that each of these schools has to offer, you'll find truly meaningful differences between what your experience will be like at school X versus school Y. So again, I'll urge you to sort of put the name in the back burner and focus on the other qualities of the experience. And then there's this notion of best. What is the best? What is the best school for biology? What is the best X, Y, or Z? I'm a little cynical about this word best because what is best for one student is not best for another. So I don't believe that there's an objective definition of that. So again, I'll encourage you to keep an open mind as we go through this process. So this spring is a time to expand your awareness, right? You're probably aware of 10 to 15 schools out there in the world. I assure you, again, there are thousands of them. So this is, again, as I mentioned, a time of reflection on you, reflection on these institutions. This is a time to expand your awareness and do your homework, do your research on these schools. And then as we go into the fall, that is when we will focus, right? So we'll work together to refine that list and come up with a manageably sized list. You do not need to apply to 25 schools, okay? I assure you, again, we can find the right size, and we are seeking a balance. And what I mean by that are things, you've probably heard the concept of a REACH, right? A REACH institution. May not shock you to hear I don't really need to encourage our students to reach, okay? And I certainly want to support your dreams, but I also want to know that your feet are firmly on the ground, right? And a lot of my work is making sure that we have some safer options that are still going to check all of those boxes for your personal and social and academic goals. Again, I assure you, there are at least a dozen out there that will be great opportunities. Okay. In terms of the admission puzzle, people have long sought this idea of this magic formula. I know Mr. Schneider would reiterate constantly that there is no magic formula, but there's different pieces to the admission puzzle. So you've got the obvious one, I would say, in the US sort of view of admissions, this is is and always has been the most important piece, the transcript, right? Reflecting choices that a student has made, how they've challenged themselves relative to what's offered here, relative to their peers and so forth. And of course, the performance side, how did they do? There are essays. Really, that's going to boil down to one longer or primary essay that essentially boils down to tell us something about yourself, and a handful of smaller essays, sort of 200, 250 word essays on an activity or understanding like why college X. They will be interested in what students have done with their time outside of class. This could be a school-sponsored activity, club, sport, could be something done outside of school, something with your church, volunteer work, family obligations, okay? There's no right or wrong answer in terms of what defines your activity list. Could be a hobby. They just want to understand what you've done with your time. And colleges are fully aware that COVID has impacted your child's ability to participate in some of those traditional activities. We'll have teacher recommendations. You'll want to aim for 2 well-chosen teacher recommendations from those faculty members that really know your child very well. Okay, there are limited opportunities here to sort of showcase what your son or daughter is going to bring to that campus community, and the teachers know our students really well. So it's a great opportunity to shine a light on who they are as people. And this sort of floating piece over here, standardized tests. So COVID, probably the single greatest impact and sort of shock to the system in the past year has been in the space of standardized testing. There are millions of students around the world who have not had the opportunity in the past, really since December 2019, to take an SAT or an ACT. So it is very understandable that nearly every institution out there went into what's called a test optional policy for current seniors. And everything we're hearing back from those schools that are of most interest to you guys suggests that about half of students applied with scores and half didn't. So for the junior class, the admissions world will have one complete cycle under its belt of really changing how they're thinking about testing and what role it plays in admissions. Most of them will continue to be test optional, if not even one step farther, which is called test blind, which a great example of this, very popular here, the University of California system, doesn't even take testing into account. So the UC system actually has 2 pieces to its puzzle now, the transcript and essays. They don't even look at recommendations. Not to alarm you, but to help you focus as you go into the coming year, they might have 5 minutes to read your entire application. And that usually is a little jarring, I think, to students when I see this reaction when they're in my office, right? It's like everything's boiling down to 5 minutes. That's understanding your transcript, looking at those essays, reading the recommendations and so forth. And there will be one from me as well, which is sort of the big picture of the school recommendation. So I want to share that with you to help you focus, right? So the hard work that I do with the teachers, with the students, is to make sure that we're very thoughtful and intentional about what we include in that application and what we kind of leave out, and then how we present it so that it's really directing the reader's attention to what's important. In terms of our students here, one of our challenges here is that these are great students, right? So they have strong transcripts and they've challenged themselves way more than the typical kid out there. They tend to have very good test scores, okay? So they know that our students can do the work on their campuses. It is not a question of academic risk. This other piece is the fuzzier side and actually ends up being much more important, I think, than people realize. Because this is where they're getting an idea of, again, who is the student? What are they going to bring to our community? So again, biggest challenges we face, that all of our students are kind of squeezed into a very narrow and high-performing band. So some folks have asked, like, oh, well, I want to see the pattern of outcomes to understand by GPA along the bottom or SAT score if there's a difference between, and I can guess whether my student would be admissible. But the reality is that there's a fair degree of overlap, again, because everyone is squeezed into this very narrow and very high-performing band. The other angle to this challenge that we face is that we have all of these great students who can, again, do very well on just about any campus that's out there, and they're all applying to a very small number of schools, okay? So this is from a recent graduating class, and basically I took out the withdrawn applications. If students got an early decision to somewhere else, they withdrew their application. So this is the net sort of count of applications. We have many schools where a third to a half of the senior class is applying to. That is a challenging situation because, again, many, if not most of them, can do the work on those campuses. But these colleges are simply not going to admit 50 students from one high school, okay? So this is the reality of the situation. This is why I want to encourage families to really keep an open mind as we seek balance to the list to ensure that you guys will have great options to consider. Going into this year, here's a little taste of what's to come. Students are going to take their AP exams in both May administrations of junior and senior year. Whoa. Not sure what's happening here. Well, that's fun. All right, since I know we're on a schedule here, I'm just going to go through this, and we will be sharing out the presentation with you. So they're going to take APs. They are some students will be taking SATs. They should not be testing in each of those times. Many of them are actually already done with SAT testing. The list, our work to sort of craft and refine that college application list will continue for some students into December, okay? And that's just an ongoing conversation. As I mentioned, each student will need to identify 2 teachers for writing recommendations. If they are interested in working on a resume over the summer, that's a good time. It won't necessarily be a required part of the process. The colleges may not have an opportunity for them to share it, but it can help them kind of focus their thoughts around the activities. Essay writing, that's something they can get a head start on this summer. Okay, so I'll be reminding and poking and prodding the students before they go away for summer to use that time wisely. Applications, they'll start filling out possibly as early as August, but they don't actually submit the applications until early November for either early decision or early action, or January for regular decision schools. If there are interview opportunities, that will happen later in fall and into winter. They don't play a huge role in admissions. If a family's applying for financial aid, that process opens up October 1st and would be completed at some point between October and ideally end of January. Decisions for early decision come out in December. Another batch comes out in February, and then we're right now on this cusp of hearing about the regular decisions. And then ultimately, students will make a decision by around May 1st and deposit at a school. We have a variety of ways that we're going to communicate with you guys in the coming year. Students are getting the idea that I'm on email all the time at weird hours of the night. Miss An is available by phone. And has the added advantage of speaking Korean, which I don't. So it's a family process, and we're here to support you all through that. You can schedule appointments, drop by appointments. I'm about 60% of the way through having a first conversation with the student. And so after spring break, I'll send something out and we'll open, completely optional, but if parents want to join for a conversation, we can do so. I say class meetings ? And that's because I don't know what opportunities I'm going to have to meet with everybody in one room, given the sort of limitations. And I'm also very conscious when they are finally in school. I don't want to use that precious activity period when they've been outside of school so much, and they're finally getting to do some of their club activities. So I think there's a value in them having that social and activity opportunity. But I'll be doing a lot of work through Google Classroom. So I have rolled this out to students, and you can ask your son or daughter to add you, to invite you. It needs to be a parent whose email is already in PowerSchool. I don't want this shared out with any consultants. And then we'll be doing a lot of work on BridgeU to manage the application process going forward. So again, we will get you there, we'll get you through the process, sort of introducing and teeing up the information at the right time. I know we're at time here, so I'm going to let you go, but please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.